Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome, welcome, welcome. It is Tuesday. It is 3 p.m. ET, and we are so thrilled that you have found us here on Crime Time on A Mighty Blaze. I'm your host, Hank Phillippi Ryan, the USA Today bestselling author of 15 going on 16 novels of suspense. My current novel is One Wrong Word, and the new one coming out September the 9th is called All This Could Be Yours, about a debut author who makes a Faustian bargain that's about to come due. You can remember about this book because it comes out the same day as Dan Brown's new book, and won't that be fun? So every time you hear about Dan Brown's sequel to the Da Vinci Code, you can say, my friend Hank Phillippi Ryan has a new book coming out the very same day. All this could be yours. But we are not here to talk about my book today. We are here to talk about the fabulous Anthony Horowitz and his new book, Marble Hall Murders, which is completely standing ovation. Do not miss this fabulous novel and another instant classic from Anthony Horowitz. Welcome, welcome, welcome. And thank you for staying up late, not so late, but staying up a little late to be with us today. Where are you and how are you?
I am very well, Hank. It's lovely to see you again. I should say to your listeners and viewers that we are sort of old friends. We've met over the airwaves and in life once, and it's always a pleasure talking to you. I am in London. I'm on the edge of the River Thames in a place called Richmond, which is southwest of London, and it's a beautiful summer's day here today in England. It is now just the evening. It's falling outside my window, but it's been so beautiful and sunny today, and everybody in the country. It's funny how the weather does it. Just everybody feels a little happier and more positive.
I so agree. All of our tulips are out right now, and the weather has sort of turned soft and pretty, and we have ducks and birds, and it is quite lovely. Although, if there's anything that would get me to stay inside, it is Marble Hall Murders. Okay, you all look, it's long. And the only thing I wanted from this book was more, more, more. Anthony, I could have read this forever. It is so entertaining. How do you think about your, I don't know if it's responsibility, to entertain your readers with what you write?
Well, Hank, that is my first and indeed my main aim. I mean, my books are entertainments. I don't have, a high opinion of myself. I'm not writing great literature like, my heroes in literature, Jane Austen and Charles Dickens and all these great writers. My job is just to provide an entertainment. And I think it's a funny thing that in the world that we live in now, a world of uncertainty, a world of change, a world of post-truth, and a world of so many difficulties, there is something very special about a murder mystery that just simply allows you to sort of pull up the bedclothes, snuggle down, and get on and find out who committed the crime.
That's exactly what I wanted to do with this book. If you've just arrived, we're talking about Marble Hall Murders. This is the advanced reader copy, which I bring out to show how I wrote in it and turned down the pages. It's Anne Cleves told me it was okay to do that. So I have done that with books that I love. And there's so many wonderful things about this book. I see Katie Crutchfield-Wasland is here, and Sharon Bishop is here, Betty Fellows. So many people here today. Brenda Gaskell and Shannon Hansen and Tori T and Renee and Christine. Lily is here. So nice to see you, Deborah and Sue Street. You are so wise, you all, to come today to hear Anthony Horowitz talk about Marble Hall Murders. It's the third in the M Mysteries books, the Susan Ryeland books, Magpie Murders, Moonflower Murders, and now Marble Hall Murders. What was it like to go back to Susan Ryland? And then we'll talk more about this particular book.
Well, it was a huge pleasure. I've loved writing this character. I think it's great that, first of all, she's not a detective. I love writing a detective story where the main character is not actually a detective. She is an editor. She works in a publishing house, or she's a freelance editor. And her approach to murder mystery is a literary one. She solves murders that are concealed in books, and she uses books and her knowledge of books as her template for getting to the truth. And I love that. In fact, she's not just, that she's drawn into these stories almost unwillingly and everything. And we've made now 2 series for TV. Magpie Murders and Moonflower Murders were both made by Masterpiece and PBS for American television and by the BBC here in the UK. And they've been very, very successful. And I'm so happy to tell you that even as we speak now, number 3, this book, Marble Hall Murders, is being shot in Dublin this week and next week in Corfu. And that will be on screen next year. And it's been just a joy. She's one of my favorite characters. I feel I know her so well, helped, of course, by the wonderful Leslie Manville who plays her. And when the opportunity arose to write this third book, I didn't hesitate. I was just glad to go to it.
I mean, two things about that. One, Leslie Manville is so marvelous and will be indelibly Susan Ryland in my mind. It's interesting that, you know, when you read a book and there's not a character, there's not an actor who's played the character, you come up with your own vision of who it is. And I wonder, I mean, she's so perfect as far as I'm concerned. How did you feel when it was Leslie Manville?
Getting one of the most successful major performers in the world to be in my show, I felt on top of this world. It was a fantastic thing. You know what was great about Leslie was, even before we made the first one, she was gunning for it. She was so supportive. You know, to raise finance like a big TV show is not easy. She loved the book. She really wanted to do the character. At that time, there was only one book, Magpie, the first one. And she stuck with us, you know, while we went through that whole financing period. Then we made Magpie. Then we did Moonflower afterwards. And then at the end of Moonflower, the last day of shooting, she said, you know, I've had such fun. Let's do another one. And my wife, Jill Green, who is the producer of the show, said, Anthony, you must adapt the new book into TV. I said, Jill, there is no new book. I haven't written one. And she said, well, go and do it now. So I had an extraordinary year where I had to write very, very quickly this book, Marble Hall Murders, you know, coming up with the idea and writing all those pages and getting it to work and everything. And then I seem to remember I finished on a Tuesday. The Wednesday, I started adapting it for TV, and now we're shooting that too. And the funny thing is that I don't know how it is, but the pressure, the sense I've got to get this done quickly, somehow helped the writing. And I do think that this one is the best of the three. And I'm watching the dailies every day that get sent to me from Dublin, the performances. I think people are going to have a real blast when it comes to TV, probably next year.
I absolutely cannot wait for it. I think that Magpie and Moonflower are not only fabulous stories, but incredibly fulfilled as on video. You know, the technique and the filming and the different sort of tones and the way that people, if you haven't watched it, you all, don't go right now. But after this show is over, go find both of those because you do not want to miss them. I wonder though, Anthony, too, when someone says we want book 3. Now, you know, book 1 is an absolute tour de force. And now readers are expecting some, you know, the Anthony Horowitz genius again. You know, so time pressure is one thing, but the pressure of being good and better, how do you take that in?
You know, it's a very, very good question, Hank, because one of my big things in life is that writers shouldn't get stuck in formula, in repetition, in doing the same thing. You know, people like Magpie, so we do Moonflower. They like Moonflower, so we do Marble Hall. Is that writing the same novel 3 times? Not for me. I want every book I write to be different to the one before. And if possible, I won't say I achieve this, better, with more surprises and new ideas in it. And I began to write Marble Hall Murders. I think it was about 5 or 6 weeks of sort of terror. Can I come up with an idea that will actually work and be original and fun? And if I couldn't come up with that idea, not about who murders who or what the clues are, but what is the world of the book? What do I want to write about? And then suddenly, walking my dog along the River Thames here in London, I suddenly have this idea about literary estates. The main character in Marble Hall Murders is a character called Miriam Trace, who died 20 years ago. She was the most successful writer in the world, but she was also a monster. And her grandson is now writing a murder mystery, and he hides inside the book the truth about his grandmother. And also, he believes she was murdered, and he puts the identity of the killer in the book too. And when I had that little, I've just given you the heart of the book. When I had that structure in my head, it just made me smile. I realized this was a world I wanted to write about, and it was a really good premise for a sort of one of this series. And after that, it was just a joy to write.
Because it gave you the 2 prongs of the book. It gave you the contemporary novel, and it gave you the book within the book, the novel that's being written about it. It's too hard to explain. We'll try that in a minute. Let me welcome you quickly again to Crime Time on A Mighty Blaze. If you are new to A Mighty Blaze, welcome, welcome, welcome. You have picked a marvelous day to come. We're talking with Anthony Horowitz about his brand new Marble Hall Murders, which comes out May the 13th. So click, 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 run, run, run. You know what to do. So one of you will win a copy of Marble Hall Murders. We'll spin the wheel of fun at the end of the show. So leave a question or a comment. Here's Christine. Here's Renee. Here's Tori T. Leave a question or a comment. When I look over here, I'm looking at the comments. Oh, so many comments today. We will spin the wheel of fun, and one of you will win. You should know A Mighty Blaze was started at the beginning of the pandemic 5 years ago now to keep us talking about books and learning about new books and sort of chatting together in the community of readers and writers. And we are still going strong, and we are so thrilled that you are here. I'm going to take 30 seconds to introduce Anthony Horowitz to you formally, although you all know him, I am sure. But let me tell you, Anthony Horowitz is one of the UK's most prolific and successful writers, unique in being active in both adult and YA fiction, TV, theater, and journalism. Several of his previous novels were instant New York Times bestsellers. His best-selling Alex Rider series for young adults has sold more than 19 million copies worldwide and still selling strong, and has become a hugely successful show on Amazon Prime TV. His breakthrough murder mysteries, Magpie Murder and Moonflower Murders, were adapted into a miniseries for PBS. He lives in London, as he says, and was recently awarded the CBE for services to literature. That's cool.
I got to meet the king. It was really exciting.
Tell us.
Well, you know, if you get a CBE, which stands for Commander of the British Empire, that's what it's a medal you get. And I got given it for my services, I think, to literature, but also I think to charity, I hope anyway, because that matters to me. And it means I get invited to Windsor Castle, which is just this amazing, huge castle in beautiful grounds. And I get to, bow in front of the king, and he pins a medal to my chest. And it was sort of, it's a wonderful thing. The honors system in this country, which rewards not just sort of big shot writers, but everybody who has helped in society, whether it's nurses or firefighters or anybody who is doing things that are positive for the country is in line for one of these awards. And I was there with loads of wonderful people, and the sun was shining, and it was a big day. And my kids came, of course, and my wonderful wife Jill, who is also the producer of my TV shows. And it made, it doesn't get me a better seat on a movie or a better seat on an aeroplane or in a restaurant, but it does at least make me feel that I've done something with my life. So thank you, Sherry, for that kind. Congratulations.
Everybody's wowing. I wonder, Anthony, what would young 10-year-old Anthony have thought about the possibility of getting a medal from the king?
Well, young Anthony wouldn't have believed it was possible, because that young Anthony at 10 years old was a failure in every single way, not doing well at school, overweight, not clever, not good at sport, not making friends. Young Anthony was in a dark place. But if old Anthony could call back over the years, he'd say, look, believe in yourself, keep going, it'll happen one day. And for me, it finally did.
And continues to happen. And that is what the wonderful thing is. But let's go back to your book. We're talking about Marble Hall Murders, the third in the Susan Ryeland series. You can read them in any order. You could start with this.
It's a standalone novel. It does have some characters from the old books. And I do warn people that actually you should read Magpie Murders first if you can. But if you can't, it doesn't matter. The book stands completely on its own, and it's a ride, and and there's nothing in there that needs to be explained, because everything that needs to be explained is explained. Absolutely. So you can just go from page one to page, I think it's 556, if I remember rightly. And hopefully the ending will take you by surprise, but you won't be too puzzled by anything along the way.
Well, I want to talk to you about that in a minute, but first let's go back to the book itself, because I have so many questions. When I look over here, I'm looking at the clock. I had to write this down because I want to make sure I got this right. So in this book, you have a fictional character who's an author writing a novel that's a sequel to a novel written by a different fictional author, which is about a certain fictional character.
You're making it sound so complicated.
And now a fictional editor is editing it and searching out the clues about the fictional author's real life and fictional life, which is all fiction anyway, because you, Anthony, are writing all of it. So I saw a review of this novel, which said, it's too complicated to explain, but trust me, you will love it. And that is sort of how I feel about it.
I think, Hank, that is what you are proving with that explanation. I mean, look, if I take my watch off and I open it up and I look what's inside this watch, I will see things that go tick, 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 and wheels and bits of crystal and whatever it is, and springs and cogs and what have you. And if I try to put it together again, I won't be able to do it. But if I look at this watch, I can tell the time in 1 second, just like that. That's how my books work.
Yes.
What you described is the complicated mechanism of it, but when you read it, it's an easy read. That to me is the most important thing. We're all of us busy. We're all of us tired. We're all of us we have loads of things we could be doing with our time. A read of one of my books has to be a ride. My reads are rides, and you come on board. You get whisked through this extraordinary landscape of murder and families up to no good and secrets hidden in the past, secrets hidden inside books that poor Susan Ryland has to decipher. But at the end of the day, it is a blast. Believe me, you get to the end and you either solve it or you don't solve it. When the solution is presented to you, everything should make sense.
I missed some responsibilities of things I was supposed to be doing because I was so immersed in this book. It's incredibly clever. It's incredibly fun. It's incredibly meta, but also it's a terrific story. It's just, I was so invested in every single part of it. How do you balance the idea that you know, there are bells and whistles like with every book, super ones for you, but at the core is really two terrific mysteries. How do you make sure that those stories are really in the forefront?
I think the most important thing is to have characters that you can believe in, characters you can either love or hate or fear, but characters who are real on the page, who aren't just ciphers, who are, as it were, carrying the plot from one page to the next, but people you can invest in. Because at the end of the day, you know, murder mysteries are not about murder, nor are they really about mysteries. What they are they're an opportunity to open a door. When somebody is murdered, you start asking questions about them. Who were they? Who didn't like them? What has happened here? What is the truth that is lurking in this community? And so you go through the door of the murder and into the world of the person. And that to me is what makes murder mysteries so exciting. They're very, very fast ways to get interested in characters.
Because one of the things that's so wonderful about your books, and we're talking about Marble Hall Murders, you all, if you just arrived, you lucky people, we're talking to Anthony Horowitz about Marble Hall Murders. One of the things that's so perfect about your novels is that we understand gradually, eventually, and then certainly why people do what they do, what caused them to take the actions that they take, why they wanted something and what that was. How much do you think about that motivation and creating that motivation for your characters?
I think that the motivation is the core of everything. You know, you start with the question of why did somebody kill this person? What was their motivation? Was this person really so terrible, or was it that the person who does the killing is the monster in this book? You know, so why is everybody involved in this world? You know, this is a story of a family, an unhappy family ruled over by a matriarch, the most successful writer in the world, Miriam Trace, loved by the whole world, but not loved by her family because she is so cruel and so negative and so unsympathetic. What is it like to live with her and to live with the secret of what she is really like? If my great-grandmother or my great-grandfather was loved by the entire world but had been horribly cruel to me, how would I live my life? How can I live in that with that secret all the time? So that's what motivates this book. That's what the sort of the whole pace of it is about. It's just about this damaged family, and one person in that family or one person connected to the family has done a terrible thing and has murdered Miriam Trace. And the secret of who that person is now being revealed by her grandson all these years later. But that puts him in danger. It puts Susan Ryland, my main character, in danger. And the big question is, will the truth come out in time?
And I do love how you've taken the real life character. She's fictional, you all, but Miriam Trace as the real life character, the author of beloved children's books, who, as you say, was a monster. And one of her sons is writing a novel about someone who is sort of a roman à clef about his life. talk about writing the fictional book about the fictional character and the book about the book.
Gosh, you make it still sound so complicated.
Yeah.
I'm writing two books. I'm writing a story about Susan Ryland, who lives in the world of now and who is an editor who is having to try and help a young writer produce a book. Now, that book is set in 1955, and it's all about a detective called Atticus Pünd, who is investigating a murder in the south of France. And in that book, somewhere in that book, Eliot has concealed a mystery about his own family and about the death of Miriam Grace. So as Susan investigates the book that Eliot has written, she finds the truth about people who are living and real now, and that puts her in danger. And so what we have here is, I mean, you know what my publishers like to say, it's two books for the price of one. The 1955 thriller and the modern thriller. But what makes it fun is that there are secret bridges and links between those two worlds, and you'll find the truth about one world inside the other world. And that's what you have to do. So you've got two murder mysteries, two villains to discover, but somehow they inform each other.
See,
I don't think anybody's writing stuff like this. I mean, I honestly don't think that there are, I don't want to blow my own trumpet, because there is so much great writing out there, but I don't think anybody is playing this particular game. And fans of the first two books, Magpie and Moonflower, get it completely and just enjoy this sort of double helix, if you like, this sort of this mirrored world in which murder reflects murder.
But you're so right in that as you're reading it, this book in a book, a contemporary mystery and a fictional mystery, book in a book, it is completely seamlessly written. It is completely easy to understand. It is completely clear at every point, and you make the readers feel so smart as they're on the journey with Susan Ryland. That her journey through her life and through her life as an editor, and her feeling of responsibility to her author and to herself and to her family and to her world, and to her job was really lovely. How does she reveal herself to you as you're writing about her?
You're very kind, Hank. Thank you for those kind words. And you put your finger right on it. Susan Ryland, this editor, is a character I really love. She is a woman on the other side of 50, and she has just come out of a relationship. She's left Crete, where she was very happy, but she's come back to the United Kingdom, to England, and she's trying to piece her life together again. And she is a strong woman. She is an independent woman. She is a very smart woman. And writing as a man, but with a woman's voice and writing for her, I feel a sense of enormous strength and liberation. Maybe it's partly to do with Leslie Manville's performance in that role that informs me, but I feel I know this woman, and I love the way that she is trying so hard to make her own life work, even as she is fighting to discover the truth before the police arrest her, before she gets into terrible trouble because of this murder that she's somehow managed to get herself involved with. But I think that the key to it all is that she is a really enjoyable person to be with, a very, very sympathetic and a strong woman. And I'm not sure if there will be any more books about her. There is a sense that this one is the last in a trilogy. I'm not certain about that, but if it is, I'll just be so happy to have brought her to the place where we finally finish, giving nothing away. But I think it is a very good place for her to be.
I'm torn about that because I agree with you, but I would love there to be more of her.
I do have one idea. One idea is in my head.
You always have a million ideas. I wonder, as you were writing this book, Marble Hall Murders, we're talking about Marble Hall Murders, you all, the new book coming out the 13th of May by Anthony Horowitz. And we see so many questions. Tori T says, every Horowitz book is so fun. And Kathy says, love your book in a book. Lots of applause and accolades from the audience. When you wrote Marble Hall Murders, were you now envisioning Leslie Manville? Because you weren't in the first one, but now do you see her?
Yes, of course. Because Leslie is such a wonderful performer, the way she speaks and the sort of lines she enjoys, I know the sort of jokes she likes to tell, and I know what she does, what is grist to the mill for her, what she'll really enjoy. So when I'm writing both the book and, of course, then the scripts, I sort of give her the lines I know she'll enjoy. And she is, I say, an actress in enormous demand, and she's only come back 3 times because she's having a fun time with us. And so it's my duty and my pleasure to give her exactly what she wants.
I mean, she's fun and she's witty and she's smart and she's confident, but she's a little bit vulnerable. And everyone would love to be loved, and everyone would love to be successful, and everyone would love to be admired. And she's just doing the best she can to make.
She's a single woman. She's beyond 50 years old. She doesn't really have a job. She's living alone. But at the same time, she doesn't accept any of those things as it were, negatives. Yeah. She is still a totally fulfilled, intelligent, active, and happy human being. And that's part of the, in the book, there's a sequence that I really like, which is that her sister gives her a cat to look after. And she says, look, why are you giving me a cat? What is that saying about me? Just because I'm alone and because I'm single, do I have to have a cat? Is that a stereotype? But of course, she ends up loving the cat. But it's questioning. I am myself well over 50, and I think that there's an interesting, that not every hero or heroine in a book has to be sort of 30 years old and wearing lycra and jumping off buildings. You can be an editor, and you can be Susan Ryland and still be a hero.
One of the things that I think is so fun about this book, about the book in a book, is that the book that is the mystery that the person is writing in the book inside your book, is also a golden age traditional mystery. But Susan Ryland is editing it, and it's not as good as your books, but it's good enough. So I was so intrigued by how you had to write a book as if you were someone else writing the book.
Again, Hank, you put your finger on the big issue of the book. Elliot Crace, this young man, is not a great writer, and he's writing this Atticus Pünd novel. But my problem was I couldn't give people a bad novel to read. It has to be good. So what I did was, I wrote it as well as I could, but I deliberately made a few mistakes in it so that Susan can say, you can't have all these different languages. You've got one scene in which, you've got French, you've got German, you've got Greek, and you've got English, that we can't have all these languages. It doesn't make any sense, which is a very, very good editing note, but it doesn't spoil what Eliot has written. It just means you have to, that Eliot has to rethink it. So Eliot's book, which is actually not that long, it's only about 1/3 of the whole book itself, it has its problems, its faults, but I think it's still a good book inside there. I couldn't possibly produce, 30, 40, 50,000 words that weren't really great.
No, and nobody would read that. It's just perfectly long enough. And it just ends on a cliffhanger, just like you have Susan say. And it was so fun for me to read it because there was a moment when I said, what's a Nazarene, some sort of a desk or something? And I thought, why are people speaking all these languages? They're all French. I don't know. And then to have Susan say, why would you do this? I'm not sure about the Nazca lines. Was so funny and so real. Going back to to Elliot Crace's book about the fictional book, the key of it, and you have said it, so it's not giving anything away, is that there are clues in that book to what happened in real life. There are things about his real life in the book. Do you think, and how often do authors put those kinds of things about their real lives in books, and purposely or subconsciously or both?
All authors use their real lives in books. We all use the people we've met. We've all used the experiences we've had. We all use what interests us because that's why we write. We want to share our world and our viewpoint with our readers. Now, in the Atticus Pünd novels, Alan Conway, the original author, drew people into the books and used them as characters, but always malignantly, unkindly. He turned them into caricatures. He made fun of them. And that's why he fell out with Susan and why he was such a difficult writer. Eliot, the writer in this book, is sort of doing the same thing. And the books are about the writing process. When you meet the characters of Eliot and the character of Susan, you are being, as it were, introduced to the world that people like me inhabit. And how, if you're sitting in this room, which I do for 10 hours a day, how do I amuse myself? Well, it might well be that somebody I have just met, I put into the book. But I only do it for a positive reason, for fun, for pleasure. I'm not like Alan Conway. I don't use my books as weapons. But nonetheless, these are books about books, as well as being murder mysteries in their own right.
It's so much fun to read about, to be involved and immersed in the mechanics of what makes a book work and what makes a mystery work and what makes a book be fun to read. And also the layer of writing an estate novel or a continuation novel or a legacy novel, that it's supposed to be the continuation of what someone else wrote. And how do you make your book be like that? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, of course I can, because I have done it myself 4 times. I've written, actually 5 times. I've written 3 James Bond novels where I had to mold my own writing to sound and be like Ian Fleming. And I did 2 Sherlock Holmes novels, The House of Silk and Moriarty, where I had the voice of Conan Doyle. And what's interesting is that writers are sort of egocentric. We want to write our own ideas. We are the kings of our own novels, and this is our vision, our world. But when you write a continuity novel, you are not that sort of strong person. You have to be invisible, because people read Sherlock Holmes because Conan Doyle was such a genius. They read James Bond for Ian Fleming. And I am almost an interloper. I'm a ventriloquist is what I am. I am simply sitting there and I am trying to emote like Doyle, like Fleming, to speak like them, to write like them, to be them. So it's a very interesting process. And I should tell you, the only reason I did those continuity books was that I loved those books as a kid. And the invitation to spend 6 months, as it were, inside 221B Baker Street in the company of the 2 greatest friends in British literature, Holmes and Watson, or to follow James Bond across Europe and, skiing and smart hotels and gunfights and girls and all the rest of it. It was irresistible to live in the worlds of those books. I loved doing it. And, I'm just seeing a note up there. Thank you. That someone who liked, I didn't see the name, liked my Sherlock Holmes books. Oh, there it is. Kathy Graham. Thank you so much, Kathy. Maybe one day there'll be a third. I would quite like to come back one more time, I think.
But you do such a good job with them, but this is total immersion writing, because it still has to be a good story, but you have to know enough about how Conan Doyle would have written and why, in order to make it feel real. I mean,
of course. I have to read his work. I have to look at his language. I have to see the tricks. Every writer in the business, yourself included, I'm sure, has a trick of the trade, a way of writing. I mean, for example, in a James Bond story, when you get to the chases and to the action sequences, the sentences get shorter and shorter, until sometimes the sentence that Ian Fleming has written is only 2 or 3 words long. And so as a result of that, you get a sort of a staccato effect, almost like gunfire. Bond does this, Bond does that, the bad guy does this, that happens, this happens. And you get the sense, the language, the shortness of the sentences adds to the excitement and to the tension. So that is how I write an action-adventure sequence in a James Bond novel. With Doyle, it's something quite different. He's a Gothic romanticist. He has a wonderful way of describing the world, which again is a more long-winded, but I try to emulate that. So it is trying to work out the tricks of the trade, not ever forgetting that these writers are fantastic originators. The greatest detective who ever lived, the greatest spy who ever lived. That's what you're dealing with.
But the originating author created the character who was so knowable that you could then continue that character's life. And that's what I think you do with Susan Ryland and some of your other characters as well, is that she seems like a person who really inhabits the world. And one of the best moments in the book is and again, we're talking about, I should hold up the real book, this is Marble Hall Murders, which comes out May 13th, and it is absolutely marvelous. You all, as you can hear from this conversation, do not miss this. Run, 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 click, click, click. You will absolutely love this. There is one of the cutest meet cute scenes I have ever read in a novel in this book, and it has to do with, I won't give anything away, but it has to do with puzzles. You just got dark, Anthony. Did your lights?
I am reaching forward to try and turn a light on. I'm looking to myself. The trouble is, in England, of course, it is now night is falling. Yeah, there's a bit more light on me. Night has fallen in England, and as I've been sitting talking to you, you've stayed bright, but I've noticed myself disappearing into the shadows. I should have been the last one in the room.
Logical. That seems logical. Anyway, this meet cute moment in the novel is about a puzzle and about someone's reaction to a puzzle, and it's instantly fabulous. And instead of talking about that, though, let's talk about puzzles and how you like puzzles, and do you do them, and do you see them everywhere? The minute I pick up a book, I'm taking every word in the book and making it into something else because I know it's you. How much fun is that for you? And what kind of puzzles do you do in real life?
I love puzzles. I love magic tricks. I love illusions. I love logic puzzles. I love riddles. I love anagrams. I spend my whole life thinking up anagrams. Whenever I'm looking at I will try to turn it into an anagram. I've got mice remit, which is crime time, in front of me now. But that's not one of the great ones. But nonetheless, you look for. I just have this. Books are made out of words. Words are playthings, and you can do things with words. You can turn them into acrostics and acronyms and anagrams and whatever. And I quite like that sort of juggling with the very fabric of a book. But everything in the world has. I take nothing for granted. Nothing necessarily is real. It is what we make of it. What our imagination makes of things is the sort of new reality, and that's what I do in my work. It's just enjoying myself with language, with words, with the fabric of a book.
And you know what comes across in it, and then we'll take some questions from the audience. What comes across in your book, and I have about 2 more questions actually, is this respect that you have for your readers, that your readers are going to get it, that you don't need to over explain, that you just need to allow them into the story, and they are smart and they will understand. Can you talk about that a little bit?
I think Susan Ryland says that crime readers, people who read murder mysteries, are the most discerning readers in the world. And there are lots of reasons for this, but one of them is I think that a crime novel invites you to walk side by side with the main character, who is the investigative, a detective, or Susan Ryland, to walk side by side with them from the beginning to the end and to arrive at the truth together. And it's not a question of outsmarting each other. It's a question of sharing knowledge and seeing who's the first person to come up with the answer. If somebody solves one of my books, I celebrate that fact. Congratulations. I'm not disappointed. And at the same time, I love the sort of the fact that a crime novel leads always to the truth. That is what you are searching for. And I think that truth, particularly in a world with 24-hour news, with fake news, with so many different versions of the same events, truth is something that we all value more than ever. And I think there is something wonderful about arriving at the end of a book like Marble Hall Murders, where every I is dotted, every T is crossed, the community has healed itself, the killer has been dealt with, and truth survives and truth lives. To me, that is the joy of murder mystery.
Of course it is, but from the standpoint of being an author, there's the book is sort of like those train schedule things that clack, 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 clack into place. And at some point, all the numbers line up and it's finished and you know the answer. Do you know, I mean, there are a couple of endings in this book, but do you know what's going to happen as you're writing?
Of course, these books are very highly structured. I sometimes spend longer on the structure than the writing, because every clue, every red herring, every suspect, every twist has to be planned in advance. And therefore, the book, when I come to write it, I have certain notebooks like the one I'm holding here, which is the notebook for the book I'm writing at the moment. The next one, I'm writing a Hawthorne novel now. Every single aspect of the book is in here. It's all, every beat in it. Obviously, the writing changes things a little bit sometimes, but I can't do it unless you can't build a building without foundations. The foundations are very important to me.
But you say in the book, first of all, I'm in awe and I'm in lust over that notebook because, I write my notes to myself as I go, but not, which look like, let's see here. Mine look like more like this.
Wow, that's we can compare. Hold on, let me see if I can find an interesting page in this one. Here, that's the beginning of my book.
That is
all the characters and how they relate, and and it's just the beginning.
And that's why it comes out. That's why you see the relationships and you see the puzzle pieces moving into different places like a Rubik's Cube, and it clicks together in a different way. But even you have someone say in the book, it may seem brilliant, a mystery, but an awful lot depends on the last chapter. Only when you get there do you find out if the book was worth reading to begin with.
But that is so true of a murder mystery. There are all books, of course, the ending matters, but you can still have enjoyed the ride, even if the ending you disagree with. But if you come to the ending of a murder mystery and you have not had every clue presented to you, and the solution does not satisfy you, and you find something unbelievable, or you feel that you've been hoodwinked, then you are going to be angry and you are not going to feel that the ride was worth it. I think that's the great thing about a murder mystery, which is that the final chapters, where everything is revealed, also reveals whether the book was worth reading in the first place.
And it is such an investment of time for a reader. And I trust the investment of anything that has your name on it, Anthony Horowitz. You all will love this novel. It is so much fun. The ending is perfect. The endings are perfect. And it all just wraps up so gorgeously. They say, what is it? I'm going to get this wrong. The first page of a book sells this book. The last page of the book sells the next book.
I hope so.
And absolutely, that is the case. Congratulations on this absolute tour de force. It's fantastic. Let's take some questions from the audience while we still have a couple of minutes. Renee says, how did you manage to get the opportunity to write several James Bond novels? How did that happen?
Renee, the Ian Fleming estate contacted me. That is to say, the nephews, nieces, the descendants of Ian Fleming, who guard the books very preciously. They asked me to write one. That was Trigger Mortis. When Trigger Mortis came out, they liked it so much, they said, why don't you do a second one? So I wrote Forever and a Day, and that was a great success too, I'm happy to say, because I love James Bond. And so they said, come back a third time. And I thought, hey, a trilogy, that sounds like a good idea. So I wrote With a Mind to Kill, and that was it. I'd done the beginning, the middle, and the end of James Bond's career.
Who do you envision? What face do you envision when
I was writing the books, I always sort of heard Sean Connery, but saw Daniel Craig.
Oh, that's a good combination.
Yeah,
because we all sort of met James Bond, not through the books, of course, but then via Sean Connery, and that's who.
And of course, it's my age, because Sean Connery was the first Bond when I was a kid. He is the one that I most remember and go to. But one of the great things about Bond was they kept changing the actor, and every time we enjoyed him just as much.
Yeah, which says something about the character and about the actors as well. Who else has a question? Do you have a favorite side or secondary character out of the characters you've written, says Julie? What a writer.
Well, I think I'd put Alex Rider very high up on my list of favorite characters, because, Alex Rider is responsible for getting so many young people reading, and that I think is a good thing to have done with my life. In terms of my adult fiction, I love Hawthorne, who is, my detective in the other series of books I'm writing, and the character based on myself, Anthony Horowitz, who is the slightly dim sidekick. I have a sort of fondness for him too, even though he does make terrible mistakes and gets everything wrong.
Those are such adorable, wonderful, clever.
They're fun to write. They are fun to write, I have to say.
Solid mysteries. They're solid, good mysteries. This isn't just fun, and that's what I think is just so.
But that's the thing, Hank. It is so important that a mystery should satisfy, and when you've read it, you should feel that it's played fair, and that it was, that it's that you had the chance to solve it, even if you didn't.
And it's so much fun to say, I should have seen that coming. It was all there. I just didn't put the puzzle pieces together correctly. I love that. Who else has a question? One more. Okay, great, Kathy.
Well, there we go. That one I can answer easily, Kathy. Any chance of another detective Hawthorne mystery? It's in front of me now. Here it is. Here I am writing it. Let me see if I can find a page. Yeah, here we are. Handwritten in ink. That is a page of the next book coming. That's chapter 6. Only another 20 odd chapters. Now I'll have another book for you. Should be out next year.
Do you have a title?
And I am indeed in there again. I am the sidekick.
And do you have a title?
Not yet. That often comes late, and it's the movie. The book is set on the book is set on the set of a movie. Complicated sentence to get out there. A film is being made of one of my books, and Hawthorne and I are visiting the set when somebody is murdered.
And Kathy, the second question Kathy had was, if there were a movie or TV show of it, who would be you?
That's a very good question. I am talking about doing a TV series of Hawthorne with my wife, Jill Green. We did Foyle's War together. We've done the Magpie Murders series together. And our next one, we hope, will be Hawthorne too. As to who will play those two characters, who can say? I don't think George Clooney is available, unfortunately, to play me, but I can dream.
But would you do it?
No, I can't act, unfortunately, which does cause a problem because I'm in the books, but I can't be in the TV series because nobody would watch it. So we'll find a way. It's no, we're talking now and working on it together. You know, my wife and I work 24/7 together. We've worked together. We've been married for 37 years, and of those 37, I think we've spent 27 years working together on the shows that we do. So we will continue. We'll find a way to do it.
Well, she is such a genius, and the way that she figured out how to do Magpie Murders for television is just
Jill Green is a genius, and I'm so lucky to have her as my wife.
Well, you're a good team. Let's just leave it at that. You are a great team. One more question. We have one more question, and then we'll let Anthony go. At what age?
You know, to be a professional novelist, ask Renee Herskovitz, like me, or Witz, I wonder. I'm an Anthony Horowitz. Anyway, Renee, I'm 10 years old. I was 10 at my terrible school, no good at anything, discovered the library, began to read, and said, hey, you know what you are? You're a storyteller. That's all you're going to do in your life. And throughout my whole life, I've never had a plan B. It's always been be a writer, or who knows. And I'm just so lucky. I'm so grateful to all you wonderful people who read my books and who support my work, and to you, Hank, as well, who have been such a friend to me for a long time now, that you have made my dream come true and made my life possible.
Well, I think you did that on your own with Marble Hall Murders, the newest Anthony Horowitz novel, which is absolutely A++ fantastic. Do not miss this. And one of you lucky listeners will be getting your own copy of it from Anthony. Let's spin the wheel of fun and see which of you will win this book. So many people here today now. Let's see who. Hey, all of you. So nice to see all of your names. It's wonderful to see that you are all here. I always think we should have music now. There needs to be music. Oh, I see. Yeah. Karen in the back room thinks she's going to win this for herself. No, Karen, spin that wheel of fun again. You're not going to fool us with that.
I was wondering what happened there.
Yeah, no. That shows that it's random. Everybody who leaves a comment gets put in the wheel of fun, and so it shows that it's Betty.
And it's Betty Fellows. How lovely! I saw Betty's name right at the start. Congratulations to you.
That is marvelous, Betty Fellows. We love having you here at Crime Time. Betty is a veteran Crime Time watcher, and this is just a perfect win. And Betty, you will absolutely love this. The rest of you, you know what to do. Run, click, pre-order. When you pre-order a book, that is telling the publishers and the world that you vote for this book, that you love this book. You don't have to pay for it until they ship the book. You're just saying with the pre-order, I love this and I cannot wait. So please pre-order Anthony Horowitz's brand new Marble Hall Murders, except for Betty Fellows, and you can buy one for a friend. Let me tell you very, very quickly before you go, do not move, or else you have 10 minutes to move. In about 10 minutes, we will have Hannah Morrissey talking about her brand new Black Harbor novel, The Unlucky Ones. It is dark and it is twisty, and Hannah Morrissey is quite an astonishing author. So I cannot wait for you to meet her in about 10 minutes at 4 p.m. ET. Meanwhile, Anthony Horowitz, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you, Hank. It's been a real pleasure.
For me too, as well. And all of you, I will see you in about 10 minutes. If you are not with us in 10 minutes, come back next week and we will have another edition of Crime Time. Until then, remember, it is always safe inside a book.